Hogmanay, 31st December, is one of Scotland's most important dates in the calendar. It was once known as the Night of the Candle, or the Night of the Blows. The candle most likely relates to religious ceremonies, or from a candle being lit to see the new year in. The Night of the Blows refers to the hitching of dried cattle hides. They were used in the evening, where a man would place it on his head, and the boys and men would follow him, hitting the hide so it made a noise like a drum. The procession would go round every house in the village, keeping it on the right-hand side, hitting the walls and shouting until they reached the door of the house, at which point they recited a rhyme. Only when their rhyme was repeated 3 times were the men allowed inside. They were then offered refreshments, such as oatcakes, cheese, meat, as it was to be eaten both at Christmas and New Year, and of course a dram. Cheese was traditionally used so that in the year ahead, should any man or boy get lost in the fog, he could peek through it and it would clear the way ahead. Another tradition was to clamber on the roof, then looking through the hole where the smoke from the fire would escape from these old houses, the man or woman would find out the name of the person he or she would marry. It was important to keep the fire burning on Hogmanay, however, no one was to go near it. To make sure this wouldn't happen, candles were placed near it and kept burning, hence the Night of the Candles. A rhyme was said while feeding the fire in order to keep the evil spirits away from the house for the following year. If it did go out, no one was allowed to go to their neighbour for kindling, as it was deemed unlucky on New Year's Day, and was said witches would do their evil to cattle. If the fire died out, it was very much seen as a major malfunction. While it roared, however, the women baked bread, so no cooking would need to be done on New Year's Day, as that was deemed unlucky. The older men of the village would pay attention to the wind on the last day of the year. Depending on the way it was blowing, it was thought that would be the prevailing wind for the rest of the year. Getting up in the morning resulted in everyone in the house receiving a dram. Following that, a spoonful of half-boiled sowens was given for luck. It was pretty unpleasant. This tradition was mainly to be found in the Central Highlands, but was known elsewhere in the country. Following the dram and the sowens, everyone greeted each other in the house and wished them well for the year ahead. When outside meeting friends, neighbours or even strangers, "A good New Year to you" was often the greeting, and still is to this day. The response was always, "The same to you," and many owe them. The boys then went out to play, in the Highlands, shinty in a nearby field, which was seen as lucky, and in the Lowlands a ball game of some sort. Then the feasting began. Breakfast was a fairly large affair, and would no doubt be helpful in soaking up some of the whisky. Today, a traditional New Year's Day meal tends to be steak pie with all the trimmings. Nothing was allowed to be put out of the house that day, not even the ashes from the fire. Dirty water, rubbish, and even the sweepings of the house had to stay in until 2nd January. It's custom to clean the whole house before New Year's Day to stop bad luck. But the clearing doesn't end there. All debts should be cleared before New Year's Day. It was also tradition to pass some of the fire to neighbours whose fires had died out overnight, as that had given the evil spirits the chance to do their mischief, and could even mean a death within the year, so fires were relit as soon as possible after breakfast. Bonfires and fire festivals can be traced back to pagan or Viking times, and before the calendars changed to the Gregorian calendar, the burning of the clavey at Birkhead in Moray on 11th January hails the old New Year. A large bonfire also marks New Year at Biggar in South Lanarkshire. It was and still is seen as unlucky for a woman to be the first to enter the house or for anyone to enter empty-handed. In days gone by, a young man taking a bundle of corn bode well for the year's harvest. However, an old woman asking for kindling was a very bad omen. The person entering the house is known as the first foot or first footing, as they are the first to cross the threshold in the new year, and it should be a dark-haired man who does it first, as a fair-haired one is bad luck, thought to stem from the time of the Viking invasion. New Year's Day was very much for being on your guard to keep away the evil spirits from the house and from the cattle, and superstitious traditions were carried out. One example is the burning of juniper in the byre and the cattle sprinkled with wine. Houses always had mountain ash in them. These are just some Scottish traditions from days gone by, although some are still observed to this day, such as taking a small offering, such as a piece of shortbread, black bun, a traditional cake, a bottle of whisky, or a lump of coal when first footing. In Dundee, it was once tradition to bring preserved herring, and today in Dufftown, a dram and a piece of shortbread is given to everyone gathered in the town square. To bring nothing is bad luck. Singing Auld Lang Syne is a must. This song is attributed to the Scottish bard Robert Burns and is sung not only in Scotland but all over the world. People cross their arms and hold the hand of the person next to them as they sing, but it's not sung to the tune Burns wrote for it. Ceilidhs also take place, where the traditional Scottish dancing continues into the wee small hours, and on New Year's Day itself, a more modern tradition has sprung up in the form of the Loony Duke, which most do for charity. Finally, torchlit processions light up the dark winter's night. Inspired by Up Helliah, a Victorian festival to commemorate the Viking heritage in Shetland, it now takes place all over the country, from the famous fireball procession in Stonehaven to torchlit processions in Edinburgh. The Stonehaven Walk takes place at midnight, with 50 or 60 burly men swinging the balls of fire over their heads, a tradition begun also in the 19th century, but it can be traced back to long before Christianity came to Scotland. It's supposed to ward off evil spirits, although others believe it signifies the coming of the sun following the dark winter. In Edinburgh, a street party takes place every year, with a spectacular firework display from the castle. Stirling Castle, too, hosts a firework display. So when you're having your dram to welcome in the new year, know that you're carrying on an old Scottish tradition. If you enjoyed this episode of Scotland's History, please like, comment and subscribe. Until next time, thank you for watching.